Let's hit it. Hello, and welcome to the Slate Political Gabfest. December 26th, 2024, the 2024 Conundrums edition. We are live before a beautiful, sold-out crowd at the Bell House. We're in the cradle of American civilization, Brooklyn, New York. Brooklyn, I did some reading. Brooklyn, Kings County. Brooklyn, the small New York hamlet where the Tootsie Roll was invented. The air conditioner was invented. The credit card. The teddy bear, the hot dog, and the roller coaster. But...
Unfortunately, not the space heater.
It's chilly, listeners at home. It's chilly here. We have a happy mob of Brooklynites here. They've taken a break from their busy work of inventing to join us for the Gabfest small contribution to the factory of human wisdom, our annual Conundrum show. I'm David Plotz of CityCast, and joining me on the Bell House stage are my two fellow Gabfest hosts. To my far left, life is really unfair when you think about John. Not only does he get Walter Cronkite's chair, he's got Dorothy Parker's wit, John Quincy Adams' wisdom, the beautiful locks of a Ryan Gosling. In his last week, Oh, actually, it's not true. His last month, not as the co-host of the CBS Evening News, John Dickerson. And on my near left, who needs a Supreme Court ethics code when you've got this woman? She is an ethics code. She's a walking ethics code. A person more qualified than both of Trump's AG nominees. From the New York Times Magazine and Yale University Law School, Emily Bazelon. Woo! Sometimes we have John crowds and sometimes we have Emily crowds. I think this is an Emily crowd.
Thank you. Thank you. I got a couple of pity. Yes. Thank you.
What about me? Does anyone love me?
There you go. All right.
Tonight, we're going to consider some of the deepest questions that a Gabfest audience could pose. Head scratchers and moral challenges. Not one of them contains the word Trump, I would note. But questions such as, if you could spend a weekend getting high with a figure from U.S. history, who would it be and why? If dogs lived approximately 7 times as long as humans, rather than vice versa, how would our relationship with them change? When you adjust the AC to make a space cooler, are you turning it up or down? And does an octopus kick or punch? This episode of the Gabfest is brought to you by NRDC. The Natural Resources Defense Council, NRDC, is fighting in and out of court to protect public health, the environment, and climate progress from Trump's Project 2025 agenda. They've done it before, filing over 150 lawsuits during his first term and winning almost 90% of resolved cases. They need your help to do it again. Support NRDC in their work to safeguard our planet for future generations. Donate now at nrdc.org/podcast. All gifts matched for a limited time. So let's hit it. Emily, does an octopus kick or punch? This is a question you posed us on the show a few months ago.
It's true. I mean, let's see. Okay, so we have to decide if they're legs or arms. Maybe kicking or punching are not the only two choices, and there's some sort of like swimming motion the octopus could be doing in which, right? Like swimming is something where you don't really think of legs and arms as having purely kick-punch functions. What do you think? No.
If you want to get high with one figure from U.S. history, would it be Emily Bazelon?
So I find myself drowning.
I have a different take on this. So I was doing a little reading. In fact, some Gabfest listeners
Doing a little reading.
Doing a little reading. My brother's a real octopus file, and it turns out that you should properly think of the octopus's brain as existing throughout their body, and in fact that they're within their arms or legs is as much of their brain as in the central brain area.
I feel like this fits with my swimming.
And so, in fact, it's not a punch or a kick; it's a headbutt.
Oh.
Or they're making an argument because their brain is contained in the thrust of
tentacles?
We should note that the reason we brought this up is because while I was stumbling around to come up with the chatter, I recommended people watch the video of the octopus hunting with fish, and when the fish don't do their job sufficiently, the octopuses wallop them on the head with either a punch, a kick, or a clever argument. And that's why we were talking about this, and you raised this pertinent question about what was it?
So if it's a headbutt, it has a lot of heads. What's the mythical creature with a lot of heads? Medusa? No. Hydra. Thank you. All right, so we're going into Greek mythology in our octopus metaphor.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to do it? What's next?
Yeah. If you could pick a figure from American history to get high with, John Dickerson, who do you choose?
Well, I don't want to accept the premise of the question
We're in New York.
before my FBI background check.
Theoretically.
I think the person. Well, there's so many choices, but let's say I think Ben Franklin is my.
Oh, good.
Because here's why. Because I think he was high when he decided, hey man, let's go get a kite and attach a key to it. And go out in that storm.
Yeah.
We got to put on Franklin's Tower first. Not a lot of Dead fans, apparently. Anyway, but also he liked to have a lot of fun. He had a free-ranging brain full of lots of interesting thoughts about things. Unless he was one of those people who, when he gets high, just shuts up and quiets down, and then he just be a big guy sort of smoldering in the corner.
I don't think he ever shut up based on history.
He would have bounced around with those curls, those gray curls.
Right.
Yeah. Mine would be Julia Child. Because when you're high, you do want to eat well.
She would have helped you.
And she just seemed like she would a barrel of laughs.
Jolly.
Yeah.
Mine is John Brown. Come on.
Whoa.
Everyone thinks that's weird. I mean, he just seems like...
Wow.
So fun.
Wow.
So fun.
Figure. I want to understand. I feel like he gives off that vibe.
I need a neck brace for that.
My other idea was maybe more unlikely for actually getting high, which was Joan Didion. Maybe she would have chilled out and relaxed and come down from her hyper chic plane. If
I feel like she already has a hummingbird heart, and
you might have
she get high and it would just go. It would,
I guess that's possible.
Fibrillate right out of her body.
I'm sad that you didn't like my John Brown idea. Okay.
John. What's next?
Oh my God! I'm trying to John Brown. All right. What small inconveniences would be included in your own personal hell?
I mean, this is
getting
obvious.
High with John Brown.
This is obvious, but I'm going to say it anyway. People who talk on their cell phone loudly on the train. I mean, so tough.
Which is worse, talking loudly on the cell phone on the train or playing whatever the hell they're watching?
Yeah, playing,
loudly.
yeah.
That's bad, but I think talking is worse because it's intermittent. At least the game, it's you can kind of tune it out after a while because it's a hum, right? It's the silence talk. Oh.
Yeah.
I think mine would be, you're in an underground parking lot and a movie has just gotten out and you have to park. That would be awful. Or you're in a shower and it's just not quite getting warm. You're like, it's about to get warm. Oh, it's about to get warm. Oh.
That's so good. Yes. Our heat went out, and it was that, and you're conditioned to thinking, oh, this is the moment where it gets warmer. And you're just stuck like a CD in the old days. And
you put your hand in there, I think it's warmer now.
But don't you have some sense of like toughness when you're in those, like, okay, this is good for me. It's like swimming when it's cold out. This is character building. Like you're getting something out of it, which is not true.
It's a cold plunge. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
good. Yeah. I was at a play recently, and no. So it was.
You really do think you should be congratulated?
Yeah. That's why I did that pause. Normally I just play with Legos, but and it was Shakespeare, which for me is very difficult because you're like, wait, I think I understand what's happening, but now there's another thing, and there goes Fortinbras, and it's like, wait a minute. So I'm really trying to grasp what's happening, and the person behind me knew the play very well, and every other line exclaimed really loudly.
Ooh.
And so it was like I had my own performance right behind me.
That's not good.
I found that difficult.
Okay. So your turn?
Okay. What was that grammar one?
Oh yeah. Here it is. Can I read it? If you could magically make it so a common grammatical error never occurs again, which do you choose? From Alan Dibner.
That's from
Alan
Dibner. And the last one was from Mitchell Kosh, by the way.
Yes. Sorry. Okay. Answers? Oh, you were asking this.
While they're about to answer, they both edited me, and they both know that commas to me are an unknown country.
They're like sprinkles on top of the ice cream cone. They could go anywhere.
Right.
Really.
So I don't put them in, and then I get nervous, and so then I throw them in everywhere. So these two guys, so I think that would be their first answer, but they're being too polite.
Mine is funner. That word, I knew you were going to say that because you liked that word. It's not a word, I feel, strongly.
Okay. I would do, fine. I would say Julia Child is fun, but John Brown is funner.
And then it would be my irritation.
Mine would be, because I work... I run a business, and so when you run a business, you hear a lot of business
you have a million
learnings. It just kills me. I tried to ban it in my last company, and that failed. And now I just don't. I just like bite my tongue. But
you
I really
have
hate
a
that.
list. I feel like. I mean, circle back, pinging. There's so many.
I
Those aren't
think
even
I've given
that bad.
up. I'm now circle back all the time.
No. How about impactful?
Impactful is bad. Yeah. Yeah.
But learnings
is awful.
Right. And why do people use grow wrong too? But now I'm trying to remember how it is. Like that they turn it into to grow something.
Someone said just had a transitive verb.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you. Also
Emily.
Bad. All right, my turn. What species sufficiently evolved and in large enough quantities could challenge humans for the control of Earth? This comes from Rajesh Krishnan, and his vote is raccoons because of their opposable thumbs.
Well, not to mention their teeth.
Yeah, and they give everybody rabies.
What's the conceit again? That are they going to control? You mean just
they're going to challenge
defeat us, or are they going to take over like the radio stations?
Yeah, they could. They're going to make a real run for it.
Put up a candidate.
I feel like ants may already have done that. I feel they already probably are ahead of us. I would vote. I think the creature that needs to be clever, sociable. It needs to be omnivorous. I think a carnivore would be too difficult. They'd be eating meat all the time. Plant species, ones who are just herbivores, are too weak. And I think so. I'm going to go with.
Oh my God, that was controversial.
Vegetarians among us. I don't mean that. I'm talking about like deer. I'm going to go with, because I've had such a fraught relationship with the crows in my backyard. I'm going to go with crows. I think crows. They're very smart. They hold a grudge. They're vicious.
And they work together. They work together in groups.
Together. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good right because that's like the conundrum, the riddle about would you rather be 10 horses or 100 tiny pony, right? This like idea of a
duck-sized horse or 100
yeah,
horse-sized ducks. No, I can't
Would
remember.
you rather?
But same idea. You need a crowd. What's the plural for a bevy? A murder of crows.
Murder of crows. See, they're already in on it.
Exactly.
They're not pacifists.
John, I have a question for you.
Oh, okay.
If you could be a fly on the wall in the Oval Office for a 2-week period in history, what would it be? And I don't know who submitted that question, but it's a great question.
I think, but this is, well, I'm stuck on my first answer, which is the Cuban Missile Crisis, because think of all the things that it has in it. First of all, it has like a real moment of, the stakes are high, real big deal moment. The technology, they were pretty sure they had it. But that was uncertain. So they weren't, they knew they had it, but there was still some kind of uncertainty about that. Kennedy, a year before that, had his hat handed to him by Khrushchev in Vienna. So he's nervous about this relationship with Khrushchev. He doesn't know how to read him. He so misread him in Vienna. He's got all that going on in his head. He has to give a speech to the country, so there's a rhetorical piece part to it. His brother ends up being the one that goes and meets with the Soviet ambassador, I think it was Dobrynin, and works out the final deal, right, which is to basically, we'll take our missiles out of Turkey. But they keep that quiet. So basically, because for the longest time, before we got a graduate seminar in lying as a president, I still make the case that there are times when Eisenhower lied about a U-2 spy plane flying over Russia, when Kennedy essentially lies about this deal that he made with Khrushchev. But he has no reason to believe that Khrushchev is going to go for this deal. But not only does Khrushchev go for the deal, but they allow the U.S. to pretend that the Russians just back down and that the Russians don't give up the fact that we said we'd take our missiles out of Turkey, which is just so incredibly complex. And it all happens in 13 days. And there's the hangover from the Bay of Pigs when basically Kennedy's like, I don't trust any of these military guys who are talking to me. So there's so much going on. So that's
good. My answer to this is kind of cheating because it wasn't the Oval Office, but the Constitutional Convention. I really want to know what they meant. Did they realize they were giving the Supreme Court life tenure, and what could we talk them out of that? That was a terrible idea. What about the composition of the Senate? If they understood how the population distribution was likely to unfold, could they change that? Anyway, I would really like to know, what about these majestic generalities? Did they mean for us to keep interpreting them? And
you probably would have been a fly on the wall because it was hot that summer in Philadelphia. And
smelly.
They'd nailed the windows shut so that word wouldn't leak out the windows. So all those guys in their buckles and their stockings and their wigs and all that, just funky
powder.
In that room.
That's what all the powder was.
Do you remember when Obama did that interview in the White House and he caught the fly? You wouldn't want to be a fly on the wall those 2 weeks.
What's your 2-week period? What's your answer?
My 2-week period is right at the end of World War II. This is probably not a really 2-week period, but the decision to drop the atomic bomb, again, the Soviets joining the war and making clear their expansive interests in the East, and the start of the UN all happens in this very brief period. I think that would be super interesting.
Yes, another high stakes moment.
Planned Parenthood Federation of America exists so that all people can get access to the sexual and reproductive care and education they need to make informed decisions about their health. More than 2 million patients a year rely on the services Planned Parenthood health centers provide, like STI testing and treatment, birth control, gender-affirming care, abortion, cancer screenings, and so much more. Right now, all across the country, reproductive health care and rights are under attack from public officials who are out of step with the will of the vast majority of Americans. The constitutional right to abortion, control of our bodies, and the health care we need has been stolen from us. And now politicians in 47 states, yes, 47, have introduced bills that would block people from getting the sexual and reproductive care they need. Planned Parenthood knows that equitable access to health care, including safe, legal abortion, is a human right. Right now, Planned Parenthood needs your help to protect access to health care. Donate today by visiting PlannedParenthood.org/protect.
Support for the Gabfest comes from USA for UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency. People facing war and violence are now facing winter far from home in temporary shelters with little to keep them warm. As humanitarian needs in Ukraine, Afghanistan, Syria, and beyond increase, ensuring continued funding to help the most vulnerable is more urgent than ever. You can help. Donate today to help keep families safe and warm this winter. UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency, works around the clock to support the most vulnerable throughout the year, providing blankets, cash to buy warm clothes, fuel for heaters, and shelter. It's during the winter months that your support makes all the difference. Help protect refugees and people forced to flee as they faced winter far from home. Your gift is matched for a limited time. Give now at unrefugees.org/winter. This episode of the Gabfest is brought to you by Public.com. Interest rates have fallen, but you can still lock on a 6% or higher yield with a bond account at Public.com. That's a pretty big deal because when rates drop, so can the interest you earn on your investment. A bond account allows you to lock in a 6% or higher yield with a diversified portfolio of high yield and investment grade corporate bonds. So while other people are watching their returns shrink, you could be earning regular interest payments. But a yield is not locked in until you invest, so check it out. The good news is it only takes a couple of minutes to sign up at Public.com. Lock in a 6% or higher yield with a bond account only at Public.com/politicalgabfest. Brought to you by Public Investing, member FINRA and SIPC. As of September 26, 2024, the average annualized yield to worst across the bond account is greater than 6%. Yield to worst is not guaranteed, not an investment recommendation. All investing involves risk. Visit public.com/disclosure/bond-account for more info.
David, if you could go back in time with one book and give it to one person, what book would it be? Who would you give it to and why? From Margot Phillips. You have to answer this one also.
Yeah.
Okay.
I hope he doesn't steal my answer.
My answer is, we get to see these questions in advance, so I've thought about this. This is not, so I think if I had to answer this without thinking, I wouldn't have come up with this answer. I would give The Guns of August or some other book about how World War I worked out to Kaiser Wilhelm. And point out to them your plan, this sort of mechanistic plan for how World War I is going to unfold and how you're going to win, or you weren't going to call it World War I, how the next Franco-German war is going to unfold is really misguided, and you're going to ruin your country, you're going to lose your throne, and by the way, Nazism is going to come out of it.
Good choice. You could change the whole course of history.
And a nice segue to mine. I would give The Elements of Drawing by John Ruskin to Hitler in 1906.
Then he could have just become a painter, like a really good painter.
I mean, he was off his nut, so of course this isn't. But he gets denied by the, I guess, Vienna Art School twice in 07, 08, 06, 09, or whatever, 06, 08, 07, 08. And that is, among other things, what sends him off the beam. So if he were, and why did he not get in? Because he could not draw the human form. So if he read The Elements of Drawing by John Ruskin.
All right, well, you guys both have better answers than me. I had a sort of sentimental way of thinking about this. I was trying to think of figures in history who were unappreciated in their own lifetimes. And so you could give them something that would make them understand in retrospect the role they had had. So then I was thinking about giving the published diary of Anne Frank to Anne Frank.
Oh,
she would
wow.
never, right? I'd probably think of some other people like that.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It wouldn't have changed the course of...
Oh
you would have forestalled the Holocaust.
Yes, but
I think you guys both get better.
But that's that's very cool.
Thank you.
I have a really morbid note on that. But then she finds out that she dies in Auschwitz.
Well, she knew that already. Oh, I guess, right, if she was still alive. Problem.
Wait, is it me or you, John?
I guess it's me.
Okay.
I'm trying to decide. You guys didn't like the band one, did you?
Sure, do it.
Oh,
We
okay.
did.
All right. At what point does a band cease to be the same band? So, for example, if Ringo Starr and Paul McCartney started playing together, would it be the Beatles? If it was just Ringo and three other people, but they were playing all Beatles songs, would they be the Beatles? Emily.
So what are the bands that, like Fleetwood Mac changed a lot, right? I mean, a lot of bands.
The Dead changed a fair amount.
Right, and somehow that didn't
Allman
matter
Brothers.
at all. Right. Right. True. Does the dead not matter? Because Jerry Garcia was so clearly the soul of the dead. And so...
Well, now that Phil Lesh is gone, it's down to just Bobby Weir and 2 drummers. But the dead also had people dying.
One of my nightmares is sitting around on a stage while people talk about the dead. Just a note.
John Brown was totally into it.
I'm not going to live this one down. It seems so dependent on the kind of band it is, whether it really is about the chemistry among the members of the band. I mean, the Beatles, it feels like they all 4 had to be there.
What if they hadn't broken up? Does that change the equation?
But don't you feel like, I feel like the Beatles, I feel like with any band, there's
John and Paul.
There's either a single person or kind of a dyad, or sometimes it's the whole band, which you can identify as, oh, that is the band. And with the Beatles, it's John and Paul. And so if John and Paul stay together, if they replaced George, if they replaced Ringo, they're still the Beatles. But if Ringo goes out on his own, that is not the Beatles.
Yeah, that seems right. It's something about the heart of it is the songwriting and then the singing, the performing.
Yeah,
but
I think with each band it's different though, right?
Yeah, because the band didn't have Rick Danko and it didn't have Robbie Robertson, and they still toured as the band, and it but didn't really feel like the band. But I think the Beatles might be a special case.
I mean, it depends how much the individual musicians are really celebrities too, right? And personalities who are transcending the group. You can't replace them.
Isn't this the problem of the ship of Theseus or George Washington's axe?
Yeah.
How many parts
pieces
can you change?
Take out?
Yeah. Have we come up with an answer?
No.
Your band could be Ship of Theseus.
Yes.
It's a good band name.
George Washington's axe or Maxwell's Silver Hammer.
Okay, how about this one, which is really, really caught my brain and I've been stuck on it. If dogs lived approximately 7 times as long as humans rather than vice versa, how would our relationship with them change? Asks Rob Meyerson.
This is a really profound question because it's so hard to imagine it, right? It's really hard to imagine dogs having that kind of longevity. And so then you're their caretaker, but you have to imagine that they're going to have many lives after you, and you can't actually control any of that or control for any of that.
Right. And I mean, you basically have to, so what happens now is, people's dogs die, and if they're journalists like us, you have to write a piece about your dog dying.
They would have to write all the pieces about us dying.
Well, no, all the pieces would be about,
what do I do?
My last moments. I just finished reading this book called Stoner, and the
about John Brown.
No, yes, the untold John Brown story. Anyway, and there is a. I don't want to ruin it for people, but it's very much about the arc of one's life. And so the arc of the life you'd have to imagine it being like your dog's there when you're having your last moments, which would change your entire sense of the dog.
Maybe we wouldn't own dogs and have them as pets in the same way, because it would seem like such a huge commitment, and then you'd have to leave them in someone else's hands for hundreds of years.
Yeah, I mean, think of it as I was saying this to my girlfriend, who's a huge dog person. And I was like, it'd be like an heirloom table. It'd be like, it's passed down. And she's like, but who wants an heirloom? You don't want your grandmother's table, right? And would you want your grandmother's dog?
On the other hand,
first of all, I want my grandmother's table.
Don did have a lot of...
Apparently they do too. But you know what it would be is right now when dogs are in the rescue shelter, basically we go and we sort of pick them among all that are there. But if in this arrangement, the dogs would interview us because they're going to be around longer.
But they're still dogs.
They're not. They don't have greater consciousness.
I don't care. Dogs, they're very smart. But we're temporary in their lives under this.
I do, though, appreciate that you wouldn't have anxiety about your dog dying, which I definitely have that anxiety, even though she's 2.5.
Isn't that the heart of what makes owning a pet so amazing and so special, is the consciousness that, you are their steward for their whole life, and you will witness their death. And
yes, it's true.
And
that's great.
to not have that
would really break a certain kind of link.
Wouldn't you not want? I think then you wouldn't have them as pets. You don't want a turtle that's going to live 250 years,
right? Also, you end up doing a lot of negotiating with your children and grandchildren. Like, oh, please take this dog. Can we all agree that the dog still has a home, and your children and grandchildren would be like, oh my God, the table was one thing, but this dog, I don't know. It's a lot.
Although if it's a dog that they grew up with, then it might be like returning to their old, campground at on Lake Minnepatingi.
I feel like it could go either way in a very strong direction. Okay, can I ask the other dog questions? And we'll have a little dog moment of the show. Okay, this comes from Thad Johnson. His dog likes to pick up trash on their walks. Things like discarded soda bottles, empty beer cans, random bits of plastic. Sometimes he comes all the way back to the house with the litter and it gets thrown away. However, sometimes he drops the trash. At that point, are we obligated to pick it up? It's not my litter, and on the whole, it helps keep the neighborhood cleaner, but I'm not certain. He also offered to send pictures, which we did not ask for. But what's the answer? When does the litter become your litter?
I think it's anything after the distance between us and the audience, so 40 feet. No, so anything after about 10 feet, I think it's your litter. I think you're responsible.
What if it's gross though, and you're not wearing gloves, and then you don't know where it was?
All valid questions. David, where's the 40 feet from your house?
No, I was saying 10 feet. I was just a joke.
I meant the dog just carries it at 10 feet, I think.
The dog carries it 10 feet, it's now yours.
What if it hangs onto it for an hour and then goes only 5 feet? Is it time or distance?
I don't think I would feel responsible after 10 feet.
All right, maybe 10 feet is too short, but there is a distance. A block. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll settle for a block.
Yeah, I think that's right.
I think once you dip your toe into the litter ownership box or whatever, you own it.
But so you think you own it instantly?
Yeah, instantly.
Does the dog just sniff some disgusting thing on the sidewalk and it's your problem?
You should have trained him.
Who here thinks John is right? That the dog... Wait. That once the dog has it in its possession, it is yours. Who thinks that? Who thinks that it takes 10 feet, a block or more for it to become the dog?
Interesting,
but
yeah, people have strong feelings in different directions.
The disgusting part is,
that's actually a very good point. If you have extra poop bags, though I often don't have extra ones,
but
this is a good idea.
Not if you're some of the people who live on my block.
Oh,
what the hell? Who are these people?
I don't know. You got to get out there on block watch. Tell them to stop. That's very bad.
It's not good. It's not good. We put that, behind me at King Lear and leaving poop on the... It's the age-old story.
Chaos in Manhattan.
John.
What class in school would you cancel, David Plotz? And what would you replace it with?
Okay, I think I would cancel... All right, replacing with is easy, because I'm sure we've done this on a conundrum. I would replace almost everything with statistics, a statistics class, and a basic economics class. I think all kids in high school need to do that. And I guess I might dump geometry, which...
Really?
Really? Why?
Yeah, exactly.
Because I think the other forms of math you definitely need to kind of advance. But geometry has always... I enjoy geometry a lot. It promotes logical thinking, but I don't know that it has had a lot of application in my life.
I find that idea obtuse.
You are an acute thinker.
I was looking for a rhombus pun, but it's hard to fit that into shape. Here's the thing. Here's the thing about. But did you do geometry in geometry? Did you do proofs where you make the T?
Yeah, I really liked that.
That's how I learned to write.
Oh.
You make an assertion, then you have to. Same deal with writing.
It is logic. It is logic.
Also, it's
maybe
such a satisfying class. Like, there are right answers. It just behaves
History?
in a very...
Drop history?
I was thinking that's not good. We can't say that. I mean, really, you want to drop the class with the bad teacher, whichever one it was.
That's the best point.
Right.
That's the right point.
Yeah.
Huh.
But I feel like sex ed, the problem with sex ed is like, yes, because it's usually badly done, but it's actually really important.
The sex or the sex ed?
Sex ed.
Huh. So, but that goes back to the good teacher part.
Yeah.
Like, right.
But
Any
I feel like
class
that sex ed
taught.
health, it's very hard to do it
Did
well.
either of you guys think of a class to drop?
No, we're mostly trying to filibuster so we don't have to come up with an answer.
Yeah, I'm also having trouble with this. Because you can't say English.
But you have to drop one, though. This is not... You can't get out of
I
this.
mean, how heretical is this? I think actually some of the time reading literature in school kind of wrecks it. So I would want people to still read the books, but maybe more on their own. Ooh.
I think you could
Sorry,
get away.
everybody.
I think you could I'm with you. I think you could get away with combining a year of history and literature. Like so you lose one of basically half history, half literature.
You could read some books that are
that
a
match the
historical
history.
period. Yeah.
And that frees up a year for you.
And along those lines, this is what sometimes we do when we're talking about topics for the show. Get rid of math because you're going to do math and statistics or economics. So you just slide it into that.
Oh, right. When we bundle things up.
Yeah, when we bundle, like...
Okay. All right.
That's also what happens on the show. Not always in favor of the bundling.
We got a number of people asked us to have ChatGPT answer some conundrums, which we rejected out of hand because I think all of us are just tired of that. But we did get an interesting ChatGPT question, I think. Assume Shakespeare, ChatGPT, and an ape at a typewriter each independently produced Hamlet at the same time. Their versions are identical, says Collin. Which is best?
The human version is best, but I can't explain why. I don't believe in the other versions. I know I'm supposed to.
Do you know which of the three it is? Do you know, or is
Yes.
it okay? Well, then the human.
But why? Why do you think?
Because you fill in the blanks with any piece of art. The art takes place between the person who creates it and the audience, and you have a fellow feeling for the person who wrote it at some level, even if it's just implicit. And you're more likely to have that with a human than with an ape or a ChatGPT.
Right. Yeah. I think the ape is an interesting side note. Obviously, between human and ChatGPT, the human, because for what John said, I mean, you do care in the same way that you could easily recreate the Gabfest and the stuff that we say with a bot, and it's going to happen really soon. But actually, people are interested in the human interaction, the fact that there are flesh and blood people behind it, and these flesh and blood people suffer and live and love. And you care. I mean, there are whole novels written about Shakespeare, imagining what Shakespeare was like, and biographies. And
I think that's all a good answer.
But I do think that also kind of holds true for an ape. Like, if an ape does it, you're like, whoa.
Well, that would have a story behind it. It's true. That would have a story that you would want to know.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah, no, for sure. Should we then segue to the question? I can't remember. If you had to take an oath on a book, not the Bible, or not the Bible, I think is the way it was at.
Why are we segueing to this question?
Well,
go ahead.
because of one of my possible answers. Okay. What would the book be? It can't be the Bible.
What would the book? I would take an oath. I have a photography book that I love so much, which is a book of photographs of old trees. And I look at it and I love trees. I love looking at trees. And then it reminds me of sort of the continuity of the planet and our obligation to be stewards of the planet, and the fact that, these trees were here hundreds of years ago and we want them to be here hundreds of years hence. It's sort of a reminder to me of my obligation to the world I live in.
I like that. I was trying to think of classic tales that everybody knows. So I was thinking like a book of Grimm's fairy tales. Then I thought no, because that has so many weird, like strange things in it. But how about a bunch of Dr. Seuss books that are all about governance? Like the Butter Battle book, the Lorax. You could probably come up with a good third one. That where it's really, these are important principles to think of as stewards of a country.
Actually, Anne, in conversation the other night, brought up, actually it was in response to, let me leave it vague, a political tit for tat. And she was like, it's like the butter beetle battle, which is exactly what that's about, is one side does one thing and then the other does the other, and it's all the way down.
Yeah, nuclear proliferation.
Exactly.
The Lorax is about stewarding the environment. Cat in the Hat, making a huge mess and not necessarily cleaning it up. That seems really relevant right now. Chaos monkeys everywhere.
But only if it's 5 feet from your house.
Yeah, okay.
What about you, John? What was yours?
So I was trying to think of what is the purpose for which you are doing this? Well, like... So the book you're putting your hand on, you presumably is about you're making an oath backed up by whatever you believe in that book. Because the first book I thought was the complete works of Shakespeare, hence the connection to Shakespeare. But then I was like, well, wait, that doesn't have anything to do with the purpose of why you put your hand on a book. However, it did answer one of our other questions, which was, and I don't think we decided to ask this, but now here I am, is what one book would you take? You know, if you had to spend the rest of your life with one book, it would probably be the complete works of Shakespeare. But you wouldn't take I don't think you take your oath on that. So I think it would be Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, which I would have picked before. Stoicism's having its big moment now, but I would have picked that well before either, because it's about, duty, restraint, humility, commitment, like all the stuff you should, or we used to care about with people in high office.
This episode is brought to you by Lumen. Your metabolism is your body's engine, so optimizing your metabolic health translates to easier weight management, improved energy levels, better fitness results, and better sleep. Introducing Lumen, the world's first handheld metabolic coach, a device that measures your metabolism through your breath. To use Lumen, all you have to do is breathe into your Lumen device first thing in the morning, and the app lets you know if you're burning fat or carbs. Then Lumen gives you a personalized nutrition plan for that day based on your measurements. It also gives you tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, workout, sleep, and even stress management. Breathe into it before and after workouts and meals so you know exactly what's going on in your body in real time. And Lumen will give you tips to keep you on top of your health game. So if you want to stay on track with your health this holiday season, go to lumen.me/Gabfest to get 15% off your Lumen. Lumen makes a great gift too, so go to lumen.me/Gabfest for 15% off your purchase. This episode of the Gabfest is sponsored by Unpacking Israeli History. If you read the headlines about what's going on in Israel, you get a tiny slice of a very long and complicated story. For more depth and historical context, try the podcast Unpacking Israeli History. If you've ever wanted to know more about what Israel is all about from multiple angles and viewpoints, this is the podcast for you. Unpacking Israeli History, hosted by self-confessed history nerd Noam Weissman, dives into the fascinating and sometimes controversial events in Israel's past and present. Noam examines each topic from a variety of perspectives, leaning into the complexities and layers around topics like how the State of Israel was founded and debates around the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The goal of Unpacking Israeli History is steadfast, to provide listeners with a nuanced, fact-based understanding of Israel's past that's both informative and really entertaining. So educate yourself, learn the history behind the headlines, and find Unpacking Israeli History wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. This episode of the Gabfest is sponsored by ZBiotics. After a night with drinks, it's tough to bounce back the next day. But with ZBiotics, there's a surefire way to wake up feeling fresh after a night of drinking. ZBiotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make ZBiotics your first drink of the night, drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. Also, ZBiotics is continuing to invent probiotics that will help with everyday challenges of modern living. Go to zbiotics.com/Gabfest to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use Gabfest at checkout. ZBiotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/Gabfest and use the code GABFEST at checkout for 15% off.
My turn? Or could it be my turn?
Sure.
You can change the political system of only one country on the planet through an instant bloodless coup. Which country would you choose? What would the new system be? And why didn't you change the United States to a parliamentary republic? From Glenn Shepard.
Glenn is here tonight, by the way, Glenn.
Awesome.
Thank you for that. I have an answer for that.
Okay.
So you know how in if you ever had a friend who like lived in a cooperative, and in the cooperative they had to make all decisions by consensus, and everyone had to clap their finger, snap their fingers to decide, and nothing could ever get decided as a result because it's just impossible to make decisions by consensus. I would
Park
make that,
Slope Co-op.
I would have that. What's that?
Wait,
Park
you're
Slope
meeting.
Co-op.
I would make Cheyna be governed by Park Slope Co-op rules. They would never get anything done.
They would never be a threat again.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I was thinking that whatever got Putin in charge is bad, but I didn't think a whole lot about how to replace it. I like the idea of Park Slope Co-op rules forever. For any
I didn't really have
quasi-enemy.
I don't have a good answer for this one.
Okay.
I don't
You can get a pass.
Yeah, no, I'm not. Can we though, since we're in this neighborhood, which strongly held American belief has been more damaging to America? Rugged individualism, American exceptionalism, or meritocracy?
Ooh, good.
Did I bring the heavy too
They're
early?
each a problem, right?
Well, exactly. That's why it's a conundrum.
I'm going to go with American exceptionalism because I think the idea that we're better, and we're so sure of it in so many ways, and we're often so dead wrong.
Well, and people die more
And people
directly
die.
as a result. I mean, you could
That's
argue
true.
that rugged individualism and meritocracy create crushing expectations that actually cause lives to shorten, but it's much clearer with the deaths to civilians, to military service people.
Yeah, it's like on a mass scale.
And also, there was a part of slavery where John C. Calhoun, when he talks about slavery, wraps it in a kind of American exceptionalism. Now, the counter argument is that the abolitionists also thought that we need to get rid of slavery because America is an exceptional place and therefore it should not exist. So,
Right. Well, the shining city on a hill is a form of exceptionalism, right? But
Right.
then it ends up always kind of having a backlash, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you guys. It's exceptionalism. Although I do think that exceptionalism served us well for a while, and that it's absolutely become a crutch. And because we don't learn from anybody, we believe we shouldn't learn from anybody else. No one has anything to teach us, and we don't need to change anything because that's just how we are, and that's creates a very static kind of society.
I was thinking for a while about rugged individualism because obviously all three of these things have challenges. And you think of like Teddy Roosevelt, who's got a lot of the American exceptionalism downsides. But his rugged individualism, which also has, right, it suggests this idea that anybody can do anything. It doesn't take into account the circumstances of your birth. But then I started thinking about the inheritance tax, which was based on the idea of rugged individualism, which is basically don't pass on your incredible wealth to your kids because it will rob them of their chance to be rugged individuals. And that seems to be kind of like, you can think of all the bad parts of it, but that seems like a good way to use rugged individualism to create more opportunity and equality.
Well, I like the idea that these can have positive as well as negative attributes.
All right. You become a city planner for your city or town, and you receive federal funding to support one large infrastructure project. How would you use the funding? Asks Tom Brogan.
What do we mean by infrastructure? I mean, does it have to be
I'm
gluing
looking
rocks
something up,
together in
Dan.
asphalt, or can it be, is a park infrastructure?
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
That's its own little mini conundrum, although it's not a conundrum. Apparently, it's totally obvious. This is the totally obvious Gabfest. So what's the answer?
Well, I asked my family this question because they're super interested in infrastructure and cities. And one of my kids said that the actual answer is you use the money to draft and pass plans to rezone your downtown and commercial corridors to allow for more housing development. So you just change the rules. And then he was like, that's not that expensive. So then you can build some good affordable housing. That's where you put your money.
That's a great answer.
Yeah.
My answer was that whenever I go to a European city, I love those big market halls that exist. And in where I live in Washington, D.C., there's a sort of smaller version of that Union Market, which has really revitalized a neighborhood in D.C. And I feel like I would build a bigger market hall in a more central location of D.C. That's what I would do.
And what would they sell in there? Like lots of artisanal cheeses and stuff?
So many artisanal cheeses out here, the yin yang. Yeah.
Would there be crafts?
There would be crafts. You did not know there were so many artisans in the DMV.
Yeah. A cobbler, maybe? Some old-timey stuff.
Yeah, they would sharpen your knives and charge you like $100 for that.
Get a wheelwright up in that bitch. Yeah.
Another thing on a more serious note, you could also undo all the terrible infrastructure of the past, right? Whatever the highway that bisects your city and has ruined it or destroyed your port, we have both of those in New Haven. I would get rid of all of those things.
And replace it with a park.
And replace it with knife sharpeners, apparently.
Lava lamps.
Your turn.
Would you rather be cursed with dancing during all of your waking hours or singing during all of your waking hours?
I mean, definitely dancing. You can just not look at it and pay attention, whereas the singing you can't block.
Yeah, but how would you do things like what? How would you cook with a sharp knife?
If there were people dancing all around you all the time, it would be challenging. I grant you that.
Driving would be really...
But what if it was singing you didn't like, or singing over and over again, or just singing all the time would be way too much?
Well,
That's
it also
very
depends.
Assaultive.
It depends at what amplitude here. Like if it's a tango or if it's just a little toe tapping in terms of the dancing.
But sometimes when there's just a little bit of noise, it's actually worse. It's like your shower that doesn't get really hot. Right. It's like the edge of your consciousness.
Yeah.
What one historical event, if changed, most changes the American identity as it is today? Brad Boron wonders.
Reconstruction actually doesn't fail.
That's the best answer.
Louisiana Purchase doesn't happen. We're not a continental nation. We're just like a series of, there's a sort of French-influenced nation in the middle, a Spanish-influenced nation in the west and south, and a British nation in the east.
What if you just take out the Vietnam War? Is that too late to matter sufficiently? I mean, it could change us from being expansionist and having this notion of ourselves as going around and interfering.
Well,
I guess we had done that.
That's interesting. Yeah, it goes back to our American exceptionalism. Except, I mean, so wait, you're saying if it didn't happen, it would cure us of those things?
I feel like it's hard to actually make that argument historically because we had already done it in other places since the beginning of the 20th century. But there's something about that stain on the American. It would change how other countries see us. Maybe that's more than our own character.
What if it made us faster to intervene? I mean, in other words, Iraq and Afghanistan happened not. The people who were in charge either did or didn't serve in Vietnam.
Right. Maybe that something like Vietnam was inevitable. And in fact, the argument for that is the Iraq War, where we did it again on a huge scale.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Your answers are better.
David, what's the most significant scientific or technological discovery since 1950? Which feels sort of in the same...
Okay. Structure of DNA, probably, which is early 50s. I think networked communication is probably the other one.
The semiconductor?
Well, semiconductor is before. Semiconductor, I wrote a book on this, was in 47. No, the transistor is in 47. The semiconductor is later. You're right.
I might not be right that it's the most important.
Well, but I guess I'm thinking that the way the world is kind of connected in the immediacy. Of
so you picked something that incorporates like the telephone, the internet. Like you kind of did a supra. Yeah. What about? I mean,
wait. Did you pick the transistor or did you?
No,
pick
I said network.
Network. Okay. Because DNA is both. DNA is so much because it's CRISPR, and it's mRNA. It's like that leads to a lot. So I think I don't have anything better than that.
I mean, should we bring AI? Could be this. We just don't know yet. I know you don't think so.
Right. Yes.
Fancy toy, not accomplishing too much yet.
By the way, my feeling about AI is that the science fiction movie we need to make is that the way the humans get around being controlled by the AI robots is that you can tell when a person is real or when it's what you're listening to has been created by a human because it'll be super random. It'll just be like you'll be talking and all of a sudden you'll say, I'd like to get high with John Brown. And no computer would be that random. And so that's the way, like, people
what you need
will
me
communicate,
for.
like, secretly when they're in their bunker and stuff, and that you would know that it's a real human and not a robot.
All right.
One more?
Last one.
If Trump is elected and started to threaten journalists...
Boo.
Sorry. Okay. You said that's true. You did say no Trump. I forgot. All right. Well, I'm just going to keep going. Would you keep going with the podcast? What would it take for you to ever pull the plug?
Boo.
We definitely are going to keep going. I thought this was going to be a nice, rousing, like, we will do it forever. Here we are. We're not going to back down. And you guys don't even want to talk about it. This is like our moment of patriotic. No one's
Sure.
with me.
I mean, yes. Fine.
Oh, well.
What do I do?
Nothing.
Wait, as a parent, who do you think you understand better as a complete person, your own parents or your children?
I think I understand my children better. I mean, I've spent my children's whole life with my children.
Interesting. I was like definitely my parents. I feel like my children
are mysteries.
Are mysteries in the sense that they have so much of the things that will shape the course of their life are still to come. And so, I mean, I have a sense of what kind of their basic character is, but with my parents, I have so many more reps, so much more data to go off of, I think.
That makes sense.
I feel sort of the same way. And having written a book about my mother and
that
also my
true.
father. But the funny thing about that is, as you guys know, as writers, when you're writing, you think like, okay, this is what I think the truth is. So my understanding of my parents may be actually, of course it is, because it's an act of creation. But I haven't. I think I know what that is. I don't know how. I hope it's relatively close to what they were. But I also think you don't. If here's a hot take. If you've done it right as a parent, you shouldn't know who your kids are.
That means I did it wrong.
No.
I know. I couldn't resist.
That's all for our show today from the Bell House. But we have a bonus episode in your feed. We're going to do more Conundrums, but that's just for Slate Plus members. Slate Plus members get so much great stuff for their subscription. They get special discounts to live shows like this one. They get early access to the cocktail party like the one we just went to. They don't hit the paywall on the Slate site, so much more. So if you are a member, thank you. Enjoy it. If you're not a member, you can subscribe to Slate Plus directly from the Political Gabfest show page on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, or visit slate.com/GabfestPlus to get access wherever you listen. That is our show for today. The Political Gabfest is produced by Cheyna Roth. Our researcher is Julie Huygen. Jared Downing helped put the show together. Tonight, Katie Rayford arranged this wonderful night at the Bell House. Thank you also to our hosts at the Bell House. Our theme music is by They Might Be Giants. Ben Richmond is Senior Director for Podcast Ops. Alicia Montgomery is the VP of Audio for Slate. For Emily Bazelon and John Dickerson, I'm David Plotz. Thanks for listening. We will talk to you next week, which is also next year.